Students of history, History 102. Let's talk about this next chapter in the Riley readings, chapter 25, looking at World War II and mass killings. Oh man, it is a lot of gloomy stuff this week. However, sometimes that's the nature of history, right? We need to take a look at this stuff. And one of the issues that we want to get into this week with the documents as a whole is how could this kind of stuff happen, right? How could this kind of stuff happen? How could governments, how could individual people commit these kinds of mass killings or support these kinds of mass killings? That's the big thing, right? So we're trying to understand what went on, and understanding's not the same as justifying, all right? So there we have it. We got 7 documents this week, and several of them pair up nicely. So I want to talk about those a little bit. The Mussolini and the Hitler document pair up pretty nicely, in part because Hitler modeled himself on Mussolini, right? So you've got these two individual leaders basically saying what they're about. And I think it's important for us to get into this a little bit because lots of times we like to, toss out the term fascism without really knowing what it means. And Mussolini coins the term. So, according to Mussolini, what's a fascist? Why is he a fascist? And why might that doctrine appeal to some people? And then we have the same thing with Hitler, right? Hitler, this is a selection out of Mein Kampf, and this is basically Hitler kind of telling his autobiographical story. Now, the trick with autobiography is it's not necessarily true, it's how somebody wants to present themselves. So, through the Mein Kampf piece, we can do the same thing with the Mussolini and the Hitler piece. What do they say is wrong with the world? And what do they say needs to be done in order to fix it? That seems like a reasonable thing. So approach those two documents that way. Then we got documents 3 and 4, the Himmler and the Steiner piece. And these really get into the nuts and bolts of the Holocaust and how it occurs. So pay attention to the Himmler piece. Who's it directed to? What's he say they're about to do? How does he justify it? And really, that's one of the things that we're really looking at. How is it justified? And then on the Steiner piece, how does he say the death camp in Treblinka was set up? How does it work? And then if your stomach can still take it, we'll get into the Timothy Snyder piece. Timothy Snyder is an interesting historian of the Holocaust. So this is a secondary piece. It's going to take you guys a little bit longer to read it. It's going to require a little more careful reading, but it's a little more straightforward reading than the others. And he is making an argument that what we normally think of as the Holocaust isn't even the half of it. And so the issue is, what is it that we normally think of as the Holocaust? And what does Timothy Snyder say should be added to that? And then what does that say about the 20th century? And then documents 6 and 7 move to Japan. Document 6 is from an American doctor who is taking a look at what the Japanese do to Nanking. I'm just going to go ahead and give you a trigger warning on this one right now. I used to do quite a bit with the rape of Nanking. It's photographed. There's plenty of images on this stuff. They're hard to stomach. Um, do the reading. What's he say happened, right? And then the question becomes, how is it that one group of human beings can come to the conclusion that this is a reasonable thing to do to another group of human beings? That's what the issue is. And then finally, Akihiro Takahashi. Super, super interesting document. A very, very interesting person. You can find YouTube videos of this guy. I encourage you to. They're pretty interesting. He was a kid when the atomic bomb was dropped on his town. And he talks about what it was like and what it's been like. And it's a pretty different perspective. And when I say you should see his videos, he has a surprisingly upbeat attitude for this. So it's a pretty interesting scene. So anyway, not real complicated this week, really getting into these documents. That's a pretty reasonable way to set things up. One thing I do want to say, maybe I should have said it at the beginning of the setup, but I will. The whole genocide, Nazi, fascist stuff can be tricky. And I hesitate to do this on a video, but I will. I'll tell you guys a little story. When I was an undergrad, my undergrad advisor had just a straight up ban on Hitler papers. And I didn't understand it at the time. Now I'm in my advisor's position and I understand it. You're going to be hard pressed to find a historical topic in which more nonsense has been written about. And so the very first issue is trying to get to legit sources. But here's the other issue. You're faced with this question, right? About like the genocide. And how does the genocide happen? And then this answer is, oh, well, the genocide happens because there's this like crazy man named Hitler that, activates it. And that historical explanation is just too simplistic, right? Because I think as you're reading through this document or these chapters, the big issue becomes, at least to me, the big issue becomes, did Hitler cause the chaos of the 30s and 40s? Or was he a product of the chaos of the 30s and 40s? And it seems like the answers, depending on how you answer that question, it takes you two different directions. So anyway, think about that stuff. We'll deal with most of it in class. Have a good day.